Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined by my similarly burnt out but now once more reinvigorated co-host Tucker Hazelin. We're here today finally to get back onto the regularly scheduled twice a week BLB gaming content grind. And today we're talking about two games that are talked about in conversation all the time.
Yeah.
Halo Infinite and ARMS. But before we do, if you want to guess what this video is actually about, head over to our Discord, leave a little message, and then we'll tell you if you're right or not. Or I guess you could just watch the rest of this video. But if you want to watch all of our videos when they go live, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like the video. Leave a comment. Hug your mom. Fuck it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Tucker, what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about Halo Infinite, which is something we've never done on this channel before. I know it's fucking wild. But the fact that Halo Infinite has dropped out of conversation in large part because it has not been receiving consistent post-launch support. Post-launch support that is, for the most part, required because the game was lacking in content when the game released, and it has put it into a strange position. The game was good when it came out. It could be better later, but they just kind of haven't talked about it. And we're putting it into conversation with everyone's favorite Nintendo post-launch support game, ARMS, which was a great game when it came out. Of course, everyone knows that. But then it received solid post-launch support, but not enough to bring it to that next level. So these games kind of exist in conversation, but we're just using ARMS mostly for Nintendo clickbait purposes. Honestly, we're going to just be talking about Halo today.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because like the problems are kind of different.
Yeah,
you know.
well.
I mean, ultimately, the parallel is just really between Halo Infinite and Nintendo's approach of let's put out the game and then drip feed post-launch support. I think probably the game that was hurt more than ARMS by this was maybe Splatoon 2, because
Sure.
I think it probably took until Clam Blitz for that game to really feel complete. But even ARMS was a similar situation of like great ideas on day one, but then it took a long time to actually put to backfill, the badge system, the characters, all this shit, right? Now Halo's in this interesting situation where it feels very Nintendo-y of here is the bare minimum to get you in the door.
Yeah.
But then 343 really took the interesting approach of going silent and then delaying the roadmap afterwards.
Yeah.
This would be like if instead of Clam Blitz releasing in December of 2017, it released in like August of 2018 or something, That's kind of the situation we seem to be in right now, because the big kahunas, if you will, CoOp and Forge have been delayed again.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in this holding pattern where we keep it in cosmetic events, with Season 2 coming in May, I believe. And with it, we're getting 2 new maps.
Sure.
And it's just a situation
in a
where,
game that has a good amount of maps, but not like an obscene amount to where that would feel like a consistent amount to add.
It's a sort of thing where like Halo Infinite's a live service, and we were actually just talking in our Nintendo Switch Online discussion of if you're going to have a service, you need a steady stream of content.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the epitome of it, of like Halo Infinite is not in the the battlefield situation where just last week they patched in a scoreboard to 2042, which is an outrageous thing that happened. But Halo Infinite is not in a good place. It's so much fun to play, but we're kind of in an environment, and 343 marketed the game in a way where you need that tail of content. But you not only need the tail off in the distance, you need it right in front of you, so you have a reason to keep logging back in. And for me, as much as I love that gameplay, I think that FPS gameplay and time to kill and everything is just about perfect. It's fallen out of my multiplayer rotation entirely, because I've done what I want to do in Halo Infinite.
Yeah.
Now I need the actual live service elements to bring me back.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about how, frankly, most live service games bungle their support in some way or another. Like, these companies that make these multi-million-dollar games and have millions of players and do really well critically and sales-wise at the beginning don't seem to realize how important consistent post-launch support is. I mean, a couple of games spring to mind of a community being consistent after launch for a while, though there is a fall-off. The only exception being Fortnite, because Fortnite has never stopped having incredible post-launch support, and that game is still, to this day, in the conversation, almost as strong as it ever was. But even something like Overwatch, which is my touchstone for live service games, had very good post-launch support for 2 or 3 years after it came out. But then dead silent after the announcement of Overwatch 2, and now people are confused and a little bit trepidatious about Overwatch 2. It's like, is that going to happen again? The first game is essentially dead. How much do they care? And
Yeah.
Halo Infinite is in an interesting place because it is the rebirth of Halo. It's 343 putting their own spin on the Halo franchise. It's a blockbuster in terms of sales and the big game for Xbox Next Generation, but also a game that was presented in this really weird way of not very well received when it was first revealed, delayed a while, but then launched good, but half-baked from a content perspective. It has all these little things poking at it. It's
Yeah.
like, what caused them to be in this situation, and how do they not realize that this is an issue for the game? I mean, there's going to be a resurgence in interest when co-op is reintroduced, but this game has been out for a long time, and I don't think that they realize that there's not going to be this huge boost when these modes are added back in because they've waited so long.
Yeah, I mean, in the specific case of Halo Infinite, I wonder if they even care, because ultimately, the sales figures for this game don't matter because it's in Game Pass. So
Which is how we
really
play it.
fucking knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, they might have that kind of built-in buffer, but I would be surprised if anyone at 343 didn't know in the fucking dark of night and when they're lying awake at 1:30 in the morning that this should have been a holiday 2022 game instead of 2021. I think that Microsoft literally just could not afford to give them another year, even though the game very clearly needs it. But what's interesting, Tucker, and you bring up a game like Overwatch, I think what this does right alongside Overwatch is know when to be a live service.
Sure.
When we had our conversation about Nintendo's live services like last year, and we were talking about a lot about there being kind of a mismatch between game and service model, where like local multiplayer focused games again like ARMS or like Mario Tennis or Golf or whatever don't really make sense as live services.
Yeah.
But an online shooter
Of course.
is kind of ripe for that, and it's kind of what you need to stay competitive in the space, because you're talking about how like it feels like companies don't realize that.
Yeah.
I think they realize it, but what I think they take for granted is that there are 9 million other free-to-play shooters you could be playing instead that are going to be better supporting their communities.
Yeah.
So when people drop off of Halo, they're going to go play Apex, or they're going to play Warzone, or they're going to play Fortnite, or if they have taste, they're going to go, well, I can't even save Splatoon 2 because it doesn't get any support anymore.
Yeah.
But there's all of these different games vying for everybody's attention. So if you're not going to be in the mix there, even if you get it right out the gate of, hey, Halo makes sense for a live service, you've doubly fucked up. Because you've positioned people for an experience and then you didn't deliver it. At least in the case of Mario Golf, it was like, well, what's even happening here? It felt like from the jump you're making a mistake. But in Halo Infinite's case, like, you were so close to giving us what we wanted. You were so close to having us on the hook for weekly Halo, events and content drops and whatever. And I know weekly is crazy, but substitute that for monthly or whatever cadence really makes sense. But it's I wagged my finger at 343.
Yeah, no, I wagged my finger at them too, because what you said about this making sense as a as a live service game, it being primarily an online shooter for the most tail of its lifetime, it'll be that. But also it's positioned in a place where we see games working for that. I mean, something like Overwatch being a full-priced game at launch or close to that and receiving good post-launch support is kind of an anomaly, because we see these full-priced games that are also live service games being the ones that bungle it. But it's the ones that are free-to-play games, Valorant, Apex, Fortnite, and Warzone, that have great post-launch support. And guess what? Xbox and 343 positioned it somewhere in the middle, in this weird half ground where they're obviously trying to appeal to that live service market, because the game is free-to-play. It's multiplayer. I don't think you need Game Pass.
It's completely free-to-play. On Steam.
So I feel like they should... It should lean even more into that free-to-play style, because it's a free-to-play game. You're paying for, if you are paying for it, the single-player content, which is a very good adventure mode. Some would say great, some would say Game of the Year worthy. But it's interesting where their focus lied, because they've positioned it in a place where it is alongside Warzone and Fortnite, but it's not being treated with the same amount of content and care as Warzone and Fortnite.
Yeah, and that's weird, because like this is the flagship.
Yeah.
And you know those other games you mentioned there are also flagships, and they get flagship level support.
Yeah.
But Microsoft doesn't really seem to care. But Microsoft clearly has a much bigger studio management issue. If you were paying attention to that initiative, Perfect Dark News, in which like everybody left, and the game seems to be in some state of complete development reboot, right?
Yeah.
So clearly, Microsoft has much larger issues on their plate. But on a player level, it's just disappointing to see all these other games, as you're saying, knock it out of the park and keep the player coming back.
Yeah.
Whereas I just don't think that Microsoft has been doing that.
Of course not. I mean, I probably haven't booted up that game since 2 weeks after it came out, because that's when I was playing multiplayer occasionally, and I never intended to stick around, and I never was going to. But I haven't even heard people talking about its multiplayer, frankly. I mean, one or two, hey, I got this cool kill clips pop up on my Twitter timeline every couple of weeks. Like, it's a rarity to see people talking about this in a way that I don't have friends that actively talk about how much they're playing other live service games, and not even just first-person shooters, but things like MOBAs, like League or Dota. People still talk about these games a lot more than they do this, and so they're still in my mind a little bit more. I feel like the lack of support has led to even the hardcore community like you. Well, hardcore, and I don't know how much you expected yourself to be as ingrained in this multiplayer, but if you were talking about this more because you were playing it a lot, even me as someone who's not going to be a part of that community would still be thinking about it and still know when these updates are coming out and know the fervor. But that's really petered out almost entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing Halo Infinite regularly into, middle January, end of January. I think Cyber Showdown was the last time I was playing super consistently, and I kind of petered off from there. And it's like, if you can't keep me engaged, well, then what are you really doing? Yeah. And I don't even think they're going to have any sort of major tie-in for when the show launches. Like, there's so many opportunities to synergize and get. It comes out on the 24th.
Oh, Christ! Wow. Sidebar. They've not been marketing that properly. I didn't know when that fucking show was coming out.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that actually is the reviews for the first 2 episodes are out, and apparently the reviews are positive, which is not what I expected based off the trailer. But apparently my parents are going to buy Paramount Plus to watch Yellowstone, so suddenly I have a lot less of a vested interest in the quality of that show. I just watch it either way, but no, it just feels like at every turn they're making a mistake here. And it makes me nervous for upcoming live service games because it feels like a much larger just industry issue. So we've covered it from Nintendo's angle. Now we're seeing it here. We just saw Babylon's Fail, which is my new nickname for Babylon's Fall, have a similar situation, right?
That was a live service game?
Yeah.
No one talks about that fucking game.
Did you know that Square Enix released the lowest scoring game on PS5 2 years in a row? With Balan Wonderworld and then Babylon's Fall? With like a Jesus 42 Christ. And 41 on Metacritic respectively, I'm pretty sure. But Tucker, the one that's in my fucking crosshairs now that I'm worried about, to make it less of Nintendo clickbait and just more of just like Nintendo conversation, Mario Strikers Hyper Challenge, what's it called? Battle League?
Yeah, that sounds right, actually.
So, we kind of stopped doing BLB. We should probably bring that back at some point.
Sure.
But I was playing a bunch of Mario Strikers Charged, because I played a bunch on the GameCube. I'm like, oh, this is fine, but I don't really get it. Playing a shit ton of Charged, I'm like, oh, I understand it now. And so I'm ready for a new Mario Strikers game. I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
But it was very clear to us as we were discussing the game that it looks like they're following a similar model here. Maybe that roster looks small, and it seems like that focus is going to be on those online leagues or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like we might be walking into a situation where Nintendo is putting us in this Halo Infinite corner once again, as we were in the ARMS corner before.
I mean, I think it's interesting that we're positioning all these games in a similar vein. And it seems like most people aren't learning from these mistakes. I mean, Nintendo, this is like their 4th year in a row of putting out one of these fucking games, and everyone be like, hey, this isn't working, but they still sell well, and they're still gonna do it. The real meat and potatoes of all this, if we're doing this comparison, is please, for the love of God, do not fuck up Splatoon 3's post-launch support. And I don't think that they will, but at least there's not a precedent for that because Splatoon 2 did have great post-launch support. But we'll see. I think what's interesting about you mentioning Nintendo and Microsoft is throwing PlayStation there as well. They want to get into the live service market. They've said that multiple times. They're starting teams. They're putting high-profile teams onto live service games. had something like 15 live service games in the next like
I think it's
3 years
10.
or whatever.
I think the actual number is 10, which still sounds like it's a hyperbolic.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but they don't have almost any experience with this. I mean, Ghost of Tsushima Legends is like the closest they have. Fucking
Destruction All Stars.
yeah, I couldn't remember the name. I was say Battle Rocket. But I hope that there's a turning point in the industry. But I frankly I know I don't have a sense of smell, but I can't smell that coming. I don't know what would push people, push these companies to learn from their mistakes, because the games still sell well. They're good. They're big at launch, and then some people play the stuff that happens afterward. But what does it really matter? They're working on the next project anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the weird thing of like if you get those numbers out of the gate, who really cares? Like we're talking this with Mario Golf. Mario Golf is the best-selling Mario Golf game in the Mario Golf game series.
Yeah. Super Rush specifically.
Yes.
What you're saying, yeah.
And then they kind of dropped the support for it, and it was a situation of, hey, you got like 2 million at this point, maybe 3 million people playing this game. Maybe you should do more than fucking add Wiggler or some things. And the game feels complete now, but ultimately, if you have that market, you should cater to it. But maybe Nintendo and Camelot don't even care because it was the biggest launch for a Mario Golf game, you know?
Yeah.
So that puts it in this weird position, as you're saying, of like, where does the motivation really lie? I think COVID is the other big factor here. I think more so now than ever, we're feeling COVID affect development.
Sure.
Whether we're talking about these games feeling content light, whether we're talking about something like Babylon's Fall or Stranger of Paradise looking clearly unfinished, in whether that's in a technical department and a gameplay depth department. And I feel like live service games might be both the solution and the most obvious sign of this sort of development fatigue of like, hey, we can ship our game unfinished, but tell the consumer that and they're still going to buy it.
Yeah.
But then we actually have to have those resources somewhere to finish it. So just it's a tricky situation that I think is not going to improve. I agree with you. I don't see the tides changing anytime soon.
Yeah, there's not a cent rolling in on these tides for the candle to light. I'm coming up with a weird extended metaphor here.
That's what my dad used to tell me. He'd kiss my forehead, then I'd go to sleep.
Oh gosh, well, I'm not going to play Halo Infinite when the extra stuff comes out, so I have no dog in this fight. But any final thoughts as a Halo Infinite player? Speak directly to the developers at 343.
Joseph, I'd like to tell you something.
Joseph 343.
Yeah, this is the proper name. Joseph 343, yes. Joseph, you guys made a great game, but I want a single-player expansion. Fuck the online multiplayer. Fuck the Forge. Fuck the co-op. Give me a single-player expansion. Fuck the conversation we just had for 25 minutes. It doesn't matter. Let me play as the Master Chief and more single-player content.
Right on.
And don't mess up Mario Strikers. And
Yeah, talking to you, Joseph Staten.
Give us an ARMS sequel. And Joseph, make sure Splatoon 3 goes over easy peasy.